Hi, everyone, and welcome back to How to Test This, the podcast designed to help software testers and myself understand risks and adopt new testing solutions with ease and confidence. I am your host, Mamadou, a quality assurance consultant with over 10 years of experience across multiple industries. In each episode, we talk to a different expert and learn from them about how they test. Today, I'm excited to welcome Julio De Lima to the show. Thank you, Julio, for being available and
Hi,
present with
Mamadou.
us.
This is a pleasure to be here today. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Okay, so why Julio? First of all, he's a project manager leading AI-driven testing initiatives. He has over 15 years of experience in QA across 18 organizations where he managed both automation and manual testing teams. He has experience in unit testing, API testing, UI testing, acceptance testing, and so on and so forth. He is a leader. He has mentored thousands of QA professionals. He runs the Brazil's largest testing YouTube channel, and he's also a well-known speaker, sharing insights about AI with multiple organizations such as Star East, Testing GS Berlin, QA Global Summit, and so on and so forth. On top of that, he has multiple AI and QA recognitions. He has a master's degree with the AI specialty. He has published AI research. He has a MIT Pro certification to design and build AI products and services. He has multiple ISTQB certifications, and he is also a Browser Stacks Icon Quality 2025. So he has many, many achievements. So congrats for that. And it's very inspiring. Yeah. So we have a lot to learn from him. First of all, we try to get more about him, about this path. Then we're going to understand why AI is important for QA. Also, he will share some best practices for responsible AI testing and for integrating Gen AI into pipelines. Then we're going to move on to talk about AI tools or learning solutions. And then we're going to talk about career growth advice and the future of QA. So without further ado, let's get started. So thank you, Julio. Let's start with your story. Can you tell us what got you into software testing and what made you stay so long?
Yeah, for sure. So, my story with technology starts in around 2004 when I got my first job in the technology field. And then I decided to be a developer. So I studied to understand more about how to develop softwares. In Brazil, which is the country that I'm originally from, we have a 3 years course we call like something like technologist, but it's a how they say, high education degree. And then I learned how to develop softwares and I worked as a developer for some years. However, my innovation director talked about software testing, and in the region where I used to live at that time, was something like not common, was not a role for the companies that we had there. And then I started to study about that and I found it very interesting, and then I decided to move from my development career to software testing. That's how I started my career in software testing. And you also asked why I still working as in this field. It's because, how to say, it's amazing. I mean, I had the opportunity to work with POs. I had the opportunity to work with developers, engineers, architects, DevOps people, and the CEO, CTO, quality is everywhere. So I have the opportunity to really impact the lives of our customers and also my colleagues, by helping them to understand how to be better, how to deliver better software. This is why I still working as a QA.
Okay, thank you. Good to know. And you're not only a QA, you're a leader, but what makes you move from being a QA to teaching and mentoring others?
That's a great question as well. I just mentioned that I started in QA in 2009, and then I started by myself. I literally bought two books and started to read whatever I found at that moment, which was not a lot, And then I said, I need to start studying more. So let me find out the training where I can understand more about software testing. And then there was a guy called Cristiano Caetano. And Cristiano was is currently, Cristiano was the founder of Canoa, a test management plugin for Jira that then was sold to Adaptavist and then was sold to SmartBear, and nowadays it's Zephyr Scale. Cristiano was the guy that how to say facilitated the first training about software testing that I attended in my whole life, and I learned something very important from him, which is as much as you share content, as much as you, how to say, teach people, more you will get back in your career, in your life. And this is some how to say advice that he gave me by example. And what I mean is that he never told me do that, Julio. He just teach me. And then it was like, how to say, mind blowing, because I understood that as soon as I started to impact the lives of the people around me, I would have my life impacted as well for a positive perspective. And then I at that very moment, I decided that I would like to be like him. And then I started to find opportunities to work with him. And then 3 years after, I got hired by him to work with him in his company. And then I started to understand from him how to be a better professor, in software testing, and how to be flexible as he is. And then, I got passionate about it, I started to speak in conferences, to provide workshops, and to create trainings, and that's why I started, and that's what kept me motivated right now.
Okay, interesting. Now we can talk about AI on real-world applications. When starting as a QA, how did you realize AI was here to accelerate your work and make you more efficient?
So I always try to get, how to say, updated about trends and things that are related to my area, which is software testing, right? And I remember that in some moment of my career, I heard a person talking about machine learning. It was back in 2017. This guy was a data scientist working for the company that I was working at that moment. And then he explained me the concept. And I said, wow, this is amazing. But how to test it, I thought. And then I also expanded a little bit my thought process, and I said, what it can help me to test better. And I tried to find the answers, and it was very difficult to find it, because at that moment it was like a lot of, how they say, difficult stuff. It was not so easy access as we have right now, And then I decided to start a master's degree, to pursue a master's degree. And when I was looking for courses, and the masters, I found one that says that I was going to understand more about how to create cognitive software. And I said, this looks great. And I looked at the agenda, and then I saw a lot of disciplines that are related to machine learning, AI, and stuff like that. At that moment, GPT was not a thing, It was, how to say, pure machine learning stuff, k-means, how to say, clustering algorithms, things like that, And then I said, I will start this. And then I started that. And then at that moment, I started to learn more about machine learning, neurons, how to create this stuff. And then I started to try to connect the machine learning world to software testing. And then when I was pursuing my master's, what I tried to do was to create solutions that helps me to test better, And then I decided that machine learning could do that for me. At that moment, AI was like just, how they say, a world that already had lots of researches about software testing and AI, but was not even close to what we are living right now. But I started to scratch a little bit that surface and understanding more about, how to say, what AI would become after. And then I started to, from that exactly moment, and now I'm talking about 2018, I started to do some experiments about machine learning. My first experiment was, by the way, presented 2 years after at Star East, was a machine learning algorithm that helped me to group issues that I found in my load testing results. And then I saw that it could help me to be more productive. It could help me to improve the way that I test. And then I started to look, to look for many other, other ways to apply machine learning and AI to testing. And I was, getting more and more and more passionate about it and understanding more about it.
Okay, yeah, got it. But you've been in this field for a long time. What's the biggest misconception you've heard about AI?
I think that the concept itself of saying the word AI is wrong, right? Because nowadays people talk about AI, but they are actually talking about Gen AI, which is just a how they say, is a part of everything that we can call when we are talking about AI itself. Do you know AI is the umbrella? Gen AI is just one sub part of that, right? So when someone say, I will learn AI, and they start to learn about prompt engineering, they are, or how to say, they didn't get the concept, right? This is one part. So we need to understand more about how to literally understand what are the dimensions of AI. And then we will find out other stuff like machine learning, natural computing, data mining, everything that is embedded in under AI and under the word AI itself. Do you know? This is one first misconception. But talking about testing itself, the misconception is when someone thinks that Gen AI by itself can be precise by itself as well. Do you know? It's not a true statement. Do you know? Gen AI is like a black box where you provide some instructions and then it will works with a magic that you don't know exactly what it is doing, do you know? And then it will give you back an output. And this output, in the majority of time, will not be correct. So you need to have the knowledge enough to go ahead and read everything and then decide if that is correct or not, you know? And here is the problem. Because if you don't know about software testing deep enough to judge if that output is good, you have a shit thing that was generated and it doesn't make sense, but then you don't having the knowledge, you don't be able to judge. So you say, this is good and this is not good. And I can tell you, I already tested many prompts and as much as I saw so far, I mean, it always have problems, do you know? Always. So this is a misconception. And I know that you have this question for after, but I would like to just, how to say, go ahead and give everyone a tip. If you don't know about software testing, if you are not able to understand and to judge the result, go ahead and study about software testing before. And then start using Gen AI. Because in order to use Gen AI, you need to be able to judge if the results are good or not.
Speaking of testing, you said also testers who deeply understand both strategies and programming can use Gen AI to become more productive. How does that mean in practice?
You understand the strategy and you understand the foundations and you understand programming and you understand automation. When you combine everything with Gen AI, you will, how to say, accelerate a lot your work because I consider Gen AI not as a oracle. I consider Gen AI as a tool to make me more productive and mechanical tasks. Let me give you an example. Let's imagine that I need to create a bootstrap project for test automation using Selenium WebDriver. Before Gen AI, I would create it by myself from scratch. Do you know? Nowadays, what I do, I go to some IDE with powered by AI like Cursor or GitHub Copilot on VS Code, and then I will create some prompts to start creating that structure for me. How can I say if that is correct or not? I need to understand the language, the programming language. I need to understand the concepts that were used. I need to understand if the methods were created properly. I need to understand if the initial tests are implementing the best practices that I read so far. But I don't need to go ahead and to click and to type and to define things because it's already there for me. I can just use the prompts to do that. Do you understand? So this is a view in a practical manner. I'm literally using the tool to do what I don't want to do, which is to create the mechanical part of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So now that we understand why it's important to learn AI or how it could make us better, let's talk about best practices and how to implement it. For example, you said earlier, Gen AI can make mistakes, can be inconsistent. How do you validate AI-generated test cases and defect reports before you check them?
It will depend, right? Let me give you an example. Let's imagine that I'm sitting next to a developer and we are working together on creating unit tests. Okay. And then the developer asked me, hey, Julio, I would like to create better unit tests. And I need your thought process to help me on it. And then I will say, okay, let's start by writing a prompt. And then my prompt, in order to be more precise, more accurate, I will need to say, hey, these are the things that we need to use as a structure. We need to have a goal. We need to have context. We need to have rules. We need to have an example. We need to have a format. And then we will fill everything based on my knowledge related to test design techniques that we can use to analyze and create unit tests. For example, I can say, let's use decision coverage or statement coverage, do you know, which are things that we generally learn when we are studying software testing. Okay. And then I will describe everything and then I will run the prompt. The prompt will bring me some unit tests, but how to understand if those unit tests are good or not? In unit testing, we can use mutation testing, which is another technique to create mutants that will evaluate how effective are the unit tests that I created. Do you understand? So I use one technique to evaluate if the other technique was done in a proper manner. We can do it for all the other techniques. For example, let's imagine that I create a prompt to define test cases using equivalence partitioning. So equivalence partitioning has an algorithm behind it. You need to identify the inputs. You need to identify the ranges of possible values inside that specifically input. We need to create one test case for each equivalence partition. And then we need to define the results, and then we can write or not the test cases, right? If I ask the Gen AI tool to go ahead and apply equivalence partitioning to a requirement, I need to know what are the results that I expect. For example, if I have a business rule that should return 3 partitions, do you know what I expect from the Gen AI tool is that the Gen AI tool will give me 3 test cases, not 4, not 5, not 10, but 3, because this is what the test design technique propose. Does that make sense? And I can do it for all the others, but in order to do it, I need to understand. And that's one mistake that people how they say make sometimes. They say, oh, okay, there is a test design technique called decision table. Okay, I will write a prompt that I will say, apply decision table. And then in theory, the Gen AI tool is applying decision table. And then the result gives to you a number. I will give you an example. 7 test cases. Doesn't make sense. Because generally, when you apply decision table, it will bring to you a combination of tests. And then this combination of tests could be, in the majority of time, even number, not a odd number, will be even number. So I got an odd number. Sounds weird, right? So if I don't use the test design technique, probably I will not understand that. And I need to be able to judge the test design, the outputs, in order to understand if that's good or not.
Yeah, got it. Another issue we can face is knowing like AI learn from past data, good or bad. Bad data, bad outcome, good data, good outcome. But what measure do you recommend to prevent data bias or security issues when training models with test data?
I don't have metrics for it. What I could tell you guys is, yeah, prepare, define what exactly you need in your prompt, because sometimes we are just abstract, and when I say abstract, I'm saying instead of just giving proper comments, you are just talking, how to say, fluffy things or shallow things. We cannot be shallow when we are writing a prompt. I was teaching how to create some prompts related to testing a couple of weeks ago, and then I started to write a prompt in front of my students, and then when I finished it, they said, "Wow, this prompt looks like a thesis, like, because it's big, it's well detailed. I mean, this is what we expect. This is what I expect when I am creating a prompt. I need to be accurate and, how to say, I need to be very prescriptive on what I'm asking for. And I noticed that people generally fear to write a prompt like that because they don't know exactly the specifics related to what they are asking. So if you are writing a prompt for software testing and you are not finding the words for that, or it's becoming very short, maybe it's because you are not understanding exactly what are the test design techniques that you need. What are the approaches, the strategies that you need? So go ahead and study more. There are a lot of good sources, and then after understanding what you are asking, then improve the way that you ask. It will give you better results. That's my point.
Yeah, 100% agree. Actually, defining your problem is like most of the solution already. Yeah. Another issue we can encounter with AI is like become, as you said, too passive, right? So how can leaders encourage testers to become critical testing thinkers?
Nowadays, critical thinking is, how to say, more. It's something that got way more value than never. I mean, if you don't have critical thinking, if you don't exercise critical thinking right now, you will probably fail miserable. I think that the lead should, how to say, should be the example by the beginning, I mean, if you, as a QA leader, want to have your testers more, how to say, critical, you need to show it by example. How can you show it by example? When you are presenting an idea, exercise critical thinking on your idea. When you are presenting a prompt, be critical, a very critical thinker on that as well. When you are investigating a issue, go ahead and demonstrate that as well. Ask the questions that think about the questions that people would, how to say, question you, and then you will show it to your team. And then when you incentivize your team, they will remember those examples that you provided, and then they will, how to say, become motivated by the way that you do stuff. I think that this is something that is really valuable. And then another thing is, every time that someone from your team come to you and give an idea or provide a report, start challenging them, not in a bad way. I'm how to say, talking about to challenge them in a constructive manner, help them to think about things that they are not seeing, but try to question them about that, and get and help them to understand points that they probably are not seeing, and this will help them to think more critically as well.
Especially as a QA, we're here to challenge, and that's where our values come from. So another question I have for you, when it comes to practical testing, how do you combine Gen AI tools with existing frameworks like Playwright, Cypress, Postman, Gmeters?
How to say, tools that allows you to code. Gen AI is very good, right? Because we can use the Gen AI tool to go ahead and to create that pieces of code for me. So answering your question, I would say structure exactly what you want, be prescriptive, and use the tool to generate the code for you, and review carefully that. Okay, this is how you do it. But when we are using a tool, for example, Postman need to allow you to go ahead and to create some stuff inside the tool, like use a kind of, how to say, feature that allows you to run some prompts inside it. I think that a big part of the tools nowadays doesn't have it embedded yet, right? Some of them are starting to use this kind of feature. So you can, first of all, understand the tool. Second, understand what you can do with Gen AI in this tool specifically, or framework, and then use that, combine it to your, how to say, previous knowledge about software testing, and the knowledge that you have on how to prompt stuff nowadays.
Okay, thank you. Got it. Now let's talk more deep into tooling or learning resources. Personally, what's your favorite AI tool?
Cursor is my favorite one, based on how to say, the flexibility that it gives to me, the features that are available there, and how to say, how fast I can do my job as a QA automation engineer when I'm using that.
Okay, got it. And another question I have about learning advices. Is there any courses, open source repository, or project you recommend for junior QA to experiment safely about AI?
There are a lot of good materials out there. For example, Terry King, it's a, how to say, referencing software testing and AI, and he has a lot of content on YouTube, so you can find out how to say, short videos, and you can also find long videos, like 6 hours videos talking about AI and testing. So he's a machine of producing content. So research about Tarek, research about Jason Arbor, research about Philip Haytrick as well, because he also has been studying a lot about Cursor, and then you found a lot of good material. Yeah.
Okay, got it. So it's almost time to wrap up. So before that, I'm gonna ask you questions about career growth on your predictions. There are QA that are just stagnant, like they're just comfortable, and QA who earn more, who are more in demand. What differentiates them?
Yeah, I would say that so both have space on the market, right? However, the QAs that are, how to say, frequently learning more about new tools and software testing, and how to say, the new technologies that are coming, they will have more opportunities, right? Let me give you a clear example. In Brazil, I have been studying the market at least in the last 4 years. So every year I go to LinkedIn, I extract the job positions. I study about what are the tools that the market is requiring most. And then Selenium with Java was, how they say, the king, you know, for the first 2 years. But in the third year, JavaScript replaced Java as the most required programming language in Brazil. And then Selenium was like on the top of the leaderboard of the most required tools. But then Cypress started to come very close and close Selenium in Brazil. And then Playwright in the third year was like in the 7th place. Nowadays, we have Selenium as the first, Cypress as the second, Playwright as the third. Do you understand me? It's like it's a lot of changes in just 4 years of study, 4 years of
Yeah.
research. So if a person doesn't study about what are the new technologies that are coming, probably they will, they will fall behind very soon. So I think that even if you don't study, you will stay hired, you will stay there. But if you lose your job, you will have a hard time trying to get a new job.
Okay. Thank you very much. And my last question for today, as a trainer, what advice do you have for someone entering QA?
Great question. So I will not talk about my my hypothesis. I will talk about numbers. So in order to do this, let me talk about the research that I did on the job positions for United States in October 2025. So I researched, I extracted and
Yeah.
73 testing related jobs from LinkedIn. And then what I discovered was that nowadays Java is the very first programming language that is most required from testers in the United States, followed by JavaScript and then Python. So if you want to learn a programming language, start by Java, and if you have time, start to study JavaScript as well. So you will be able to get to be to increase your probability to be hired if you start by the most required programming language. When we are talking about tools, Selenium is the first one, followed by Postman, and then Playwright, Cypress, and JMeter. So these are the top 5. If you understand how to use those top 5 tools, and then you make sure to show it in your LinkedIn profile, you probably will be found by the majority of the recruiters, because they will be looking for these abilities. And the third thing is related to test management tools. So TestRail is the one that is most required in the positions, followed by Zephyr and then X-Ray. So these are the 3 ones, the top 3 that you should learn more about. So we start by studying TestRail, and I think that this will help you to be, again, more visible to the recruiters, and then we'll be able to get your job more fast.
Okay. Thank you very much, Julio, for your time. So for everyone who is curious about you, they can connect to you on LinkedIn. You're very active. You're on Instagram as well. And there you have also a GitHub repo with different projects to get started. I will also share some interviews in English because most of your audience is in Portuguese. So I will do that in English only, but also in Portuguese as well if they're interested. Some talks about what you did in Browser Stacks, Stark, and everything. I will include everything in the show notes. So that's it for me. So thank you again. If you are a software tester, I think you could find this valuable to add Gen AI into your toolkit. So hope you find today's episode valuable. If you did, please share it with your colleagues and stay tuned for upcoming episodes. We will continue to learn from experts about their favorite testing tools and tips to become better software testers. I am Mamadou. This is How to Test This, and see you next time. Thank you. Bye.